Good evening, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. We're going to give everybody another minute, and then we're going to get started. People are being admitted in. Give it one more minute, and then we're going to get started. Thank you so much. Okay, good evening. We're going to get started, and with our introductions, and by the time everybody gets admitted from the waiting room, we'll all be here together. Good evening. I am Shana Frydman. I'm the CEO of Shalom Task Force, and I'm thrilled to be here this evening to welcome you and have the opportunity to moderate this important conversation. Our hope is this is the beginning of many conversations. Our mission at Shalom Task Force is to combat domestic violence and help foster safe and healthy relationships in the community. I would like to first start by welcoming Dr. Jonathan Donath. Dr. Donath started a charity called Daily Giving, and if you don't know what it is, you really should. It is an incredible organization that leverages our joint power of tzedakah and community. I'm personally a supporter from way in the beginning, and I look forward to the daily emails that share which charity we supported for that day. As he will explain, it is the simple and effective way for us to take concrete steps in creating community. Shalom Task Force is very grateful for being a recipient of Daily Giving. It makes our work possible. It makes programs like this possible. Thank you, Dr. Donath.
Thank you so much for having me, Shana. And it's great to see this panel and this important discussion tonight. I just would like to be very brief and just like everyone to imagine if I could guarantee you a mitzvah every single day, no matter what. It would take none of your time. It would take zero effort, and it would only cost you $1 a day. That's what we've created with Daily Giving. We have over 14,000 Jews from 39 different countries giving $1 of tzedakah together every single day. And every day we give the money, we give the entire amount of money to a different incredible Jewish nonprofit like Shalom Task Force. And we have it's a diversified portfolio of charities. So for $1 a day, you get to help poverty organizations and cancer organizations and substance abuse and mental health and life-saving organizations and transplant organizations and on and on and on, and Torah and Kiruv and Chesed Shel Emes. And so no matter who you are, no matter how wealthy you are, you can't support everyone. For $1 a day with Daily Giving, you can make a massive, massive impact. We are, like I said, giving over $14,000 a day, 365 days a year. Every day it goes up as more people join. And Daily Giving doesn't take a penny. 100 cents of your dollar goes to charity. And like Shana said, every day you're going to email telling you where the money goes. You're going to learn about incredible organizations you never even heard of that you're like, wow, Mikam Chesro, we have there's just no limit to what we could do. And when we come together, what's $1? But when we come together as a people, it has a massive impact. In less than 2 weeks, we're going to give out our 10 millionth dollar in 4 years. And now we're giving out over $5.2 million a year. So I just want to leave one story because it's so pertinent to the conversation we're about to be having. And that is that when we started 4 years ago, I had someone sign up for Daily Giving for $2 a day. And I called her to thank her because she was sort of distantly related to me. And I asked her, why did she sign up for $2 a day? She was about 35, 36 years old, never been married. And she said, I signed up $1 for myself and $1 for my future husband. And within 6 months, she got engaged. And then I told that story to Rabbi Ben-Sion Klatsko, and he told that story on one of his talks to singles. And then he sent me a text from a woman in Chicago who had texted him that my daughter is 29 years old, and she's been dating since she's 21. And I heard your speech, and I signed up for $1 a day for her and $1 a day for one of her friends who's single. And I want to tell you that I signed up on May 13th, and she met her chassan on May 20th. And then I was at an Ornava Shabbaton, and I met these two single girls, I don't know, 26, 27. They came up to me and they said, they're already daily givers. could I set them up? And I didn't really have anyone to set them up with. I said, but you know what? Why don't you sign up for a $2 a day in Zuchus of meeting your spouse? And just a few months ago, I got a text from one of them. It was only like 3 or 4 months after I met her. She said, Dr. Donath, I can't believe it, but I figured, what the heck? It's just an extra $1 tzedakah a day. I figured it would take a lot longer, but wish me a mazel tov. I just got engaged. And then this week, just literally 3 days ago, I got an email from another daily giver who said, I want you to know that I signed up for $2 a day, one for my granddaughter, one for my great niece, and they both got engaged. So, you know, maybe daily giving is the solution to all of the whole shidduch crisis. I don't know, but it can't hurt. So I urge everyone, the happiness factor of all our daily givers, the panelists themselves, I think all the panelists themselves are daily givers themselves. And it just takes one moment, but everyone forgets if they don't do it right away. So tonight, either right now, as in the next 30 seconds, or write yourself a message or note below right now, go to dailygiving.org, sign up. It takes 30 seconds. You'll be so happy you did. And you'll be supporting Shalom Task Force and so many other incredible organizations. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. It really is one of the highlights of my day. I always check it and we share it. All my siblings signed up and it's something we talk about. So thank you. It's a wonderful opportunity. Central to our mission of Shalom Task Force is to provide education to community members of all different stages in their lifespan to learn about healthy and safe relationships and how to be supportive in our different roles. This webinar is to support parents of single men and women in our community. Many of your children have attended workshops in high school or their gap year seminary programs. And we are available to go into your seminary, shuls, base measures programs, college campuses, or any other group to offer an array of different workshops. Our focus is always on how to build a healthy relationships and how to get help and help others. We have I think when we got logged on, when I wrote this, it was over 400. Right now, we're over 500 registrants from all over the Jewish community. And as someone who lives in New York, but I'm not from New York, I am very happy to say that, or proud to say, that the vast majority of people are not from the New York area. And to that really speaks to me because we at Shalom Task Force are here to serve the full Jewish community. And it's wonderful to see our community members from all over the United States, Canada, United Kingdom, and even Argentina. We have a group here from Argentina. We're doing some work down there, and we're all together as a community working on this. This topic is obviously important to so many. This stage of helping our children find a spouse is exciting, but can be very anxiety-provoking and stressful for both parents and children. The response tonight is from the diverse community. And although dating may look different between different communities, we all want our children to find spouses, to build relationships anchored in respect, safety, love, Torah values, and care. And that journey, it doesn't always feel so simple. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your questions and input. This discussion is based on the many questions submitted over the last few weeks. We had more today. We'll try to get to as many as possible, and feel free to write questions below. It will be anonymous, and as time permits, we will do our best to respond. And again, this is intended to be a beginning of a conversation. We hope to bring future programming to address more questions and continue this conversation. So without further ado, I want to introduce our panelists tonight and get started. Rabbi Efrem Goldberg, the Morah d'Asra and Senior Rabbi of Boca Raton Synagogue, BRS, is a rapidly growing congregation of over 1,000, the number's probably more than that now, families in Boca Raton, Florida. BRS is the largest Orthodox synagogue in the Southeast United States. Rabbi Goldberg's warm and welcoming personality, as many of us know from behind the bima, has attracted people of diverse backgrounds and ages to feel part of the BRS community, reinforcing credo of valuing diversity and celebrating unity. Thank you, Rabbi Gold, for being here and for all your support of Shalom Task Force. Rachel Tuchman is a licensed mental health counselor with over 15 years of experience. She has worked with many diverse populations, including children and adults with developmental delays, behavior issues, parenting skills, divorce, infidelity, and infertility. She's also a health at every size aligned clinician and works with individuals with disordered eating and eating disorders. And I have to say, she's also a very strong and wise voice in the world of Instagram, something I very much appreciate. Currently, she offers services in her Cedarhurst, New York office. Lisa Elefant is a director, is one of New York's premier Shadchanim. She's a driving force behind the countless beautiful marriages and the ever-growing Adopt-a-Shadchan organization, our partner on this program tonight, which began with a small group of dedicated Shadchanim committed to helping singles find their match. Lisa has and continues to spearhead some very innovative approaches of helping people find their b'sherets, including shul share, Zoom rumors, wedding redding, which I love these names, fretting. Did I get that right? I pronounced that one. Okay. Prayer pact, be my guest in Adopt-a-Shadchan chat. She lives in Brooklyn with her family. So we have a fantastic panel tonight. I'm really honored to be here with you. I think we're just going to dive in. We have many questions, and I'd love to hear, and feel free to jump in, and let's get started. So there was a question that came in, and I thought it was interesting. It said, my 23-year-old son claims he's not ready to date, but both his parents and his Rebbe disagree. What should I do? And I want to just make it a little bit more general of how do I know if my child's ready to date, and how do I help them feel equipped to start this next chapter. Rabbi Goldberg, do you want to start?
I'll start, though I might be the least qualified to start. It's an honor to be here and to be on this panel. And I'm looking forward to listening and learning a lot. So, Shana, thank you for all the work that you do. Shalom Task Force, extraordinary organization, and we're so grateful. We hope that your work is unnecessary soon, but while it is, we're so grateful for all that you do. And Lisa that I've partnered and worked with. It's really an honor to be together. And Jonathan, I'm a proud member of Daily Giving, and I hope everybody joins. It's astonishing that number is not much higher of what's given out every day. So I hope everybody does join. It's an interesting question, that question. My son says he's not ready. There's fascinating parts if you unpack the question, which include his Rebbe and his parents think he's Rebbe and he doesn't. The fact that the questioner lumped the Rebbe and the parents together is in itself worthy of an entire discussion. Who is best positioned to advise and mentor a young person when they're ready? And there's a partnership. Obviously, everybody has input and they know him in different ways, but who does that young person turn to more for guidance, trust more, defer more to, the Rebbe or the parents? Who knows him better, who knows him well? The real question is that if a young person says, I'm not ready, why is anyone necessarily pressuring or forcing? Do the parents, are they excited to make a wedding? Are they excited to say they're married off their child? Is that their definition of success at the stage of their life, that they want to be able to be counted among those who've married off their children, who have married children? And I think it's really, really important to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, why am I engaged in this? Why do I feel maybe even aggressive about it or confident about it? Is it about me or is it about my child? Are they ready or am I ready to be the parent of somebody who's married? Is their dream to walk down their aisle or is my dream to walk them down their aisle? And really to be honest with ourselves about where we're at and whose interests we're putting first. Is it the child or our own? There's nothing wrong with parents dreaming to reach that stage of life. There are natural progressions and you reach a phase and a stage and maybe you have friends and peers who are there and you've attended many weddings and you're always the friend and you want to be the parent, not the bridesmaid, but the parent of the bride or the groom, of the chassan or the kala. So it's reasonable, it's understandable to yearn to be there, but you have to ask yourself when you are encouraging that young person, what's the motivation? Is it about them and is it about you? And I would say, and I'm eager to hear the other greater experts, but if the young person doesn't feel they're ready, so maybe they lack self-esteem or self-worth. Maybe we need to coach them on what it means to be ready. Maybe they are ready and they don't know it. But I certainly think that ultimately we shouldn't be pushing or pressuring them until they going into this process, which can be grueling and filled with stress and filled with questioning ourselves and others, really feel that they're in a good place to be doing it. And in terms of the qualities that are important for young people to have to be ready, as I said, it's a big question, a lot packed in. So I will try to wrap it up because I know we have a lot to get to. But I think that one of the big areas that's missing in general with our young people in dating, I feel strongly about this and I've had the opportunity to speak about it, is achrayus, is responsibility. It's not, we hold their hands and we coddle them and we've disempowered them and we've taken so much away from them. And understandable that the reason a lot of it has evolved and developed, but in the end, we want to make sure that we don't have children who are incapable of being adults, because the morning after the wedding, we're not living with them. And we're not refereeing, we're not in between, we're no longer coordinating their dates, their conversations, what they should say, when they should say it, how they should feel. So we need to make sure to prepare them, not just to get under the chuppah, but the morning after the chuppah, do they know how to be mature adults, how to have a mature relationship, how to take responsibility, and what it means to be in a marriage of the achrayus that a husband and a wife bring to it. So in examining and evaluating, is the young person ready to begin dating? It's not, are they ready to begin dating? Like, are their shirts pressed and do they have the right clothing? And do we have a Photoshop picture to attach to a resume? And do we have good references? And did the parents volunteer enough in their communities so that when people make the phone calls, we could say the right things about them? I think those are questions a lot of people are focused on, but I think we have to focus on the person themselves. Are they mature? Are they developed? Do they have a healthy sense of self? Do they have the qualities that make for a good husband and wife? And are they ready to take achrayus of what it means to be married?
Yeah. So important. Rachel, do you want to chime in a bit on what you see?
I think that was a great you could totally join the practice. I think that was a great answer. But I guess just kind of like piggybacking on that and maybe just fleshing out a couple points, I think that there is a lot of focus on getting our kids married versus setting them up to have healthy and fulfilling relationships. And so if that's the goal, I just need to bring my kid to the chuppah and then like, I can sleep now. That's kind of like just the beginning. So we really want to make sure that our kids do feel ready. And you might think that your child is ready and that your son is totally in the right frame of mind, or your daughter, but if they're saying they're not, anyone who knows any of my work just from online or any of my writing knows I am a big advocate for trusting your kids, trusting that they know what's best for them, teaching them when they're young, that they are the experts of their own bodies, the experts of their own feelings. Obviously, we are there as kind of a support and a guide to help them make sense of those feelings. But I find that when people are given the opportunity to talk openly about their feelings and they can hear themselves more clearly, then they're able to kind of make sense of what they're feeling. So if you think that your child is ready and they're saying they're not, instead of being like, no, I spoke to your Rabbi and they said you are, I would ask a question. I'm curious about like, what's holding you back? What's going on? And not in a way of like, what's holding you back? I want to fix it, but I want to help you to gain clarity in whatever is going on for you. And whatever you end up deciding, I'm going to trust that you know that this is the right decision for you. And again, I think when we are very focused, like Rabbi Goldberg was saying, on like, but my kid needs to get married. And if you have that fear of like, well, the Shadchan told me that the list of guys is very small and very like not so great, then you're going to feel like, okay, but hurry up. Like, I know you said you're not ready, but, and that girl that was waiting for you, she's not going to wait. And we really like the parents, or we just have to kind of take a step back and understand that the most powerful truths that people find, the ones that they take the most seriously, are the ones that they come to on their own. So with your facilitation of asking those questions and talking to them, they'll eventually come to a place where they feel that they're ready or they're not. But again, I really just believe that we need to respect our kids' wishes and not force them into situations that we think that they need to be in, that they don't feel ready, comfortable, safe to be in.
You know, I was thinking we were putting, and at least I want to hear this perspective from a Shadchan, but you know, I'm a parent of young children. And I often think that it starts with young children, right? Like this isn't something, you know, we want to equip our children for their next chapters in life, wherever that chapter would be. And it has a lot to do with what you were speaking about, really, like responsibility for where they are up to, getting to know themselves, being able to feel in the moment and have some agency around that, and not being forced onto the next stage. People have their own journeys, and then getting the support around it. And I think that's something that we recognize as parents, is that sometimes we might not be the right person to move them into the next stage or help them figure out what their next stage is, and how do we find the right people around them, you know, and to help them explore that in a way that is healthy for them and safe for them. Lisa, I would love to hear your perspective from the Shadchan, because I'm sure this is something you hear often.
Very often. Thank you for including me. So at Adopt-a-Shadchan, we're basically a network of Shadchanim from all over the world, vetted, screened, and we speak to each other daily about different issues that come up. And the number one issue, you know, that we have is like, you know, the getting married versus staying married. You know, everybody is feeling this pressure and feeling this rush, and there's a lot of pressure on Shadchanim. You know, people like to paint a picture that Shadchanim are pressuring you. Well, a lot of you are pressuring us, and we see that it's backfiring, because a child could be ready at 21, and there could be children that are ready at 23, and there's no magic number, and it's really where the child is. And we are now initiating a huge program where we feel like it should be mandatory. There should be a mandatory across the board dating formula, dating, you know, module that you have to go through. But when you come home from yeshiva, from seminary, I'm not talking about before, when you come home, feet on the ground, listen, you know, take some courses, know what you're getting into. And, you know, I very much appreciate, like, you know, what Dr. Tuchman said about like trusting your gut, but in a way, we feel like there are a lot of kids that come home and like, they don't know if they should trust their gut or not. They just don't have the right tools. And a lot of it is from, like Rabbi Goldberg said, like the coddling. And, you know, we see it like even when the kids are in school, you know, it's like they come home and right away it's like, oh, I'm calling that teacher. You know, oh, that teacher, he's on my hit list, versus maybe we should be thinking like, okay, what did my kid do wrong? Let me think about this a little bit. So we all need to come together to the table to figure out how to equip our children to date healthy. Because if a child is not healthy and you just want to marry them off, you're just passing the buck over to some poor, unfortunate young child who barely has the ability to help herself or himself, and and then help your child. Like it's just unfair. It's just not right on any level.
Rachel, did you want to respond to that at all? I feel like, or
I mean, I think that just I don't know if I misunderstood, but just in terms of trusting the gut, I don't know that trusting the gut means that you're always right, but it means that our bodies communicate to us. So we want our kids to know, hey, when you're 6 years old and you're uncomfortable with something, I'm not going to say, no, that's not, because then if you're in a situation where it is legitimately, objectively uncomfortable, I've created a doubt for you that you cannot trust yourself. So it starts when they're very young. And I understand that probably a lot of the parents that are here are like, well, my kid's not 6 anymore. They're 19. So Rachel, your help is like useless right now. But it is something to think about, to even have the conversation with your kids to say, you know what? I know that at this time in your life, as much as I want to kind of be in control of your decisions, I can't. And as much as I want to protect you from making all the mistakes in the world, I can't. But I still want to talk with you and I still want to help you sort things out. And if you're one of those parents that did not have this relationship with your children until now, so when you start saying this, they're going to be like, what therapist are you following now that you're kind of, this is very foreign. You could say, I know that this is a really important time in your life, and I don't want to do anything to mess it up. I do want you to be empowered. And so I want to have the right conversations, and I want to help you ask the right questions, and I want to help you to feel comfortable. And I want you to trust that when you're going into a relationship with someone, that it feels good. So I think trusting the gut, again, it starts very early where we teach our kids from a young age. I believe you. I trust you. You're feeling this kind of way. Let's talk about it. That even now, so you went on a date, you're not really sure how you feel about this person. I don't have to say, well, continue going out until like you just hate them. I can say, okay, let's talk about it. Do you think another date would be a good idea? What do you think about this? What was something that you like? Just asking questions, being curious, but also honoring that there's a confusion or there's a doubt, or instead of being like, no, stop it, you're just nervous, you're being too picky. We really just want to hold space for all the feelings. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are correct or that they are spot on. It just means they're valid. And I think certainly going into a marriage, young kids getting married, like we marry kids off young in our communities, 20, 21, 23, 25, even 30 is very young. In the non-Jewish world, when you're 35 with 4 kids, they're like, I'm like just dating for the first time, right? We're babies when we get married.
What cult are you part of?
Right? They cannot understand it. And I mean, if you think about it, like I was married very young, and it's ridiculous how clueless we were. And in a way, it's beautiful. You grow together and you become wiser together and you realize how dumb you are together. But again, we have to just have that in mind, that we are still guiding our kids and we are still supporting, and we don't want to leave it all up to them. But again, we don't want to take control. We just want to be curious, and we want to notice when we're projecting onto them what we think they need. And if we believe they're old enough to get married, we need to believe that they're old enough to make this decision themselves, again, with our guidance, but themselves.
Can I just follow up on something that Rachel said that I think is really important? Mm-hmm. We don't know the age demographic of the parents who are tuning in or the young people that we're talking about. But by the time they're 19, 20, and 21, it's not too late, that's for sure, but it's very late in the game to be talking about what do they need to be married. What we really need to do is think as parents, reverse engineer, when we're raising our children from when they're 2 and 3 years old, what are the qualities as they're growing up that will prepare them and position them to be mature adults and successful in every arena of life, but including if they're a candidate for marriage, including marriage and including their parenting. Do they have the skill set? What Rachel's saying is trust their gut. We're raising them to outsource their gut, to always defer to others and surrender to others to tell me, how do I feel? How do I think? What do I do? What do I wear? Where do I go? So it's from a young age. You can't necessarily develop a gut to trust when you're 20 and in the throes of things, if you've been until now taught to outsource it. So it's from a young age. And really, there's a story of coming to Gedolim, when pregnant, what do I need to do? A parent, you're 9 months too late, all these stories. But we really need to be thinking when a young age, what qualities do I teach my children about being financially responsible, about being helpful and not waiting for others and taking responsibility? How do I teach about the koach of being mavater, being foregoing and forgiving and making space and room for others? How do I learn to listen to my inner voice and communicate and resolve conflict and all these skills that are necessary for life? You can't wait till 19, 20, 21, where we've protected and coddled and now wake up and think we're going to be able to do some cram session in to get them ready, or wake up the day after the wedding when there's dysfunction and wonder where it comes from and we haven't prepared them all those years in advance.
Right.
I just add on one. I just want to add on one more point.
Yes, go ahead.
Just to underscore is that, Shadchanim very often we'll meet singles for the first time, and we are shocked on a daily basis about the disconnect from what the parents tell us the single is looking for, and when we actually meet the single and they tell us what they're looking for. So really, this has to start not when they're dating. You need to have a solid, strong relationship with your child. And if for whatever reason you don't, or it hasn't been possible up until now, then you can't be the one in charge of their dating. Then you need to give it over to somebody or get somebody else involved.
And I think one comment that I don't know what I'm hearing from Rabbi Goldberg and Rachel is, and if we're old enough to ask people to get married, then they have to be involved in their dating. Nobody else should be in charge. I mean, they certainly can be helpful. Maybe I'm misunderstanding, but they could be helpful. They could be guiding. They could be an advocate. But the person who's going to be hopefully getting married needs to be an adult in that situation and take ownership of that. And that might look different for different people in different families, which brings us to the next question, because I don't know if anybody wants to immediately comment. We could do this all night. But, but to be an active person, because once they're married, they have to be an active member of that relationship. It's not anybody else's relationship. Okay. Next question is it's also a mishmash of a number of questions. I'll try to make it short so we get to it. But when I do my research and make calls, what should I be asking? What should I be listening out for? So that's interesting. I think it's interesting. And we put it together with, if my child's not in a shidduch system, what is the due diligence can I be doing? What are the boundaries I should be setting at this stage in the dating process? So I think that's an interesting question. How do we support our children in that dating process through this reference checking or the questions? Interested in hearing what people say about that. What are important things and what should we be looking out for in that arena? And if our children are not in that kind of more conventional, traditional system, what are other ways we could support them? Who wants to jump in? Lisa, do you want to jump in there?
Sure. So there's a big, difference of opinion, chaluke deos, we're not going to name names, of certain people who feel that the whole research situation is silly, unnecessary. So I disagree to a point. And again, yes, I agree that people who put references on their resume, those references better speak super, super highly of the person. And yes, you're totally trusting that this person is being honest and upfront with you. Ask direct questions. Just ask it straight up. Don't call somebody and say, tell me about the person. I'm not saying start off interrogating the person, but if there's something that's bothering you or you really want to know, does the person have nice midos? How does he or she interact with each other? How does he or she work under pressure? There are just certain things that you can ask. And if you ask 2 or 3 people, you'll kind of get the vibe. You can, obviously, as discussed, when your child goes out on the date, they should be going in with proper tools that they should be able to pick up after 1 or 2 dates, certain red flags, or like Rachel said, your gut will tell you something. I'm not okay with this. I'm not comfortable with this. But I feel that reference checking should be very, very, very much a part, as much as we can, part of a system. And also, you don't have to get all your FBI, CIA investigations done before the first date. You can also just do basic fact checking, and then if the child continues 2 or 3 dates in, you can call more and you can find out more.
Rabbi Goldberg, do you have any?
Maybe I'm the anonymous person that Lisa was alluding to.
Yeah,
I'm not against the reference checking.
Mm-hmm.
It has a place and it has a role, and particularly in my interpretation of what's happened is, I'm not that old, but when I was younger, people set up people that they knew, and so the people who were being suggested, being read as shidduch, trusted the person who was making the suggestion and didn't feel the same level. Today, because Baruch Hashem, Lisa and others are working tirelessly and selflessly and endlessly to try to help make shidduchim, which is incredible, and we owe them so much, but working so hard, often working on behalf of people that we don't know and we don't know well. So then that single or their parent or whoever's helping with their vetting can't necessarily trust the person making the suggestion, so they have to do the research. So there's a place for it because of sort of where we've put ourselves. Halavai, and I think Lisa agrees, we can get back to people setting up people they know, advocating for their neighbors and their nieces and their nephews and their friends, and young people advocating for people that they know, and we can insert trust back into the system. We could take away some of the need to do this. So I think I agree there is a role for it right now, but they should be productive and useful and reasonable questions. I'm on many shidduch resumes. First of all, when you put someone on your shidduch resume, let them know that you did. Maybe share the resume with them, so when they get a phone call, maybe they haven't seen you since they gave you a gift on the beam at your bar mitzvah, and they haven't kept up entirely, but now you're on the resume, and your family moved, and they didn't know. So first of all, let someone know, and let them know the best parts of you, so they can best represent and advocate for you. But I think the kind of questions we want to know are what make good marriages. Is this person a person who can be mavater? Can they compromise? Do they have a spirit of compromise? Is it their way or the highway? Is there somebody who takes interest in others or always needs to assert themselves? Is this a person who's a micromanager or a person who's open to influence? What kind of a listener are they? How do they resolve conflict? Maybe in the way that they grew up in their home. Is this somebody who brushes conflict under the carpet or likes to talk things out and work things out before they move on? Again, you have to leave something to talk about still and to get to know each other if you actually pass the threshold of making it on the date, which today is the source of the same simcha that it used to be when people got engaged. Now, if they just agreed to go out, the dancing in the streets. Right. So there is a room for references. I think that we should ask responsible ones. We shouldn't ask questions that we know we're never going to get an honest answer. So when you call the rabbi and ask questions about medical history and you're looking for lab results, the rabbi doesn't have access to it, nor do friends, any reference. I'm only speaking on my behalf. The Rav doesn't have access to the lab results. And if he did, he would be grossly irresponsible to share it. And often when people ask me inappropriate questions, I'll say, if I was your Rav and I knew about you, would you want me to share it without permission? So we should ask questions that are reasonable, questions that we can reasonably expect an answer to come to, questions that the answer will influence whether we think that's a good idea or not, and make sure to encourage people more to explore with curiosity and to build maps to discover about each other when they actually finally meet.
Right. It's not the asking questions is not asking, when you say yes, you're not saying yes to get married, you're saying yes to meeting. And then you have an opportunity to get to know each other then. And that's where, the individual who's dating needs to be really actively involved in being curious about the other person to get to know the person.
And mental health, I don't know if it's one of the questions that we're going to get to, the role of mental health in shidduchim, but as an example. So one of the questions we regularly get is, someone asks, is there any mental health issue with the person or in the family? And it's a complicated question because certainly there are diagnoses and there are people who are encountering certain challenges that should not be, you can't hide. It's irresponsible not to disclose. But the question is that coordinated? Is it communicated? Who discloses it? How? What's fascinating is they expect the Rav or the reference to answer before they even agree to go out, whereas the boy or girl themselves, the poskim are saying it's not till the third, the fourth, the fifth date. So they should keep it to themselves through the first few dates, but the reference was supposed to disclose it earlier without permission. So we have to remove the stigma around some of these issues because, right, and again, I don't know if we're going to get to this later. I don't want to take the time myself now. We have experts here to talk about it, but there are different levels and different issues that people have, and we can't have an environment where if somebody needs some help to navigate ADD or anxiety or others, which is most of the world today, they're all of a sudden going to be eliminated from a conversation. It's going to be held against them when by actually addressing their issue, they'll make an amazing husband or wife, mother or father. So we need to really frame the questions productively, usefully, in a way we can learn, and in a way which won't add stigma, but will make transparency so that we can set people up for the best marriages later.
I just want to make one comment. I feel personally, because I'm in it from both ends, I'm a parent, I'm a shadchan, just because you're looking into somebody doesn't give you the green light to ask every type of question under the sun. There's got to be some kind of boundaries here that can't and shouldn't be crossed, and questions that shouldn't be asked before a first date. You can't go ahead and put people on the spot, like Rabbi Goldberg said, and ask them their deepest, darkest secrets. And between me and you, name me one family that doesn't have some kind of mental health issues. And I'll tell you that's a mental health issue in itself, because if you're telling me that this family's perfect, no comment on that.
Right. Rachel, do you want to add anything?
I mean, I think that when we do research as a way to like assure perfection of the person we're looking into, that's like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
And I think when people are asking questions, they want a lot of their uncertainties answered. And again, you have to ask yourself, why am I asking these questions? And I think a lot of the time, it seems to me, I'm not so pro the references just in general. Again, I understand it's necessary at some level, but I find that a lot of time people, it seems to me, are looking for like, what's wrong with her? What's wrong with him? That's what they want to know. And so when you're asking a question framed that way, you're not helping people be honest. So we push people underground and then we kvetch that we were duped. I was just asking if he's on Wellbutrin, like what, but I know how you were asking me that. So I'm not telling you that right now, because I know you want to know he's depressed, forget it, off the table, right? He had anxiety in 6th grade. He didn't hand in his science project, done. How are you asking the question? Are you allowing people to be honest with you? And I know that I've gotten some calls about friends or friends' kids, and the way that I'm asked the question, and granted, yes, you're going to call me, know that I'm very cynical. When you're calling me already, I'm like, what is this, right? So I'm not a good person to call, but I already can sense from the questions, like what you're trying to get out of me. And so I'll say, like, why is that an important question? Or what information, what is that going to give you to know that, you know? And I think that, again, people are kind of like already pushing people out. Oh, it's not for, I'll go on the date, but it's not for me. I know it already. So you go in with this like conceived idea of it's not going to work. And again, I kind of miss those days of where you could meet in a more natural setting. Your friend set you up and you trusted your friends, even a shadchan that you know in the neighborhood that knows you, or your rabbi. I just feel like now people are a lot more hesitant and looking for perfect, flawless, whatever, when they themselves are not perfect and flawless, and they themselves have issues, but somehow they want a partner who doesn't have any issues. So I just think that we're just not being realistic. And these questions, that's why I just want them to stop or just completely be revamped. They're not realistic and they're not helpful, you know?
And they're not strength-based, they're not looking for positive qualities, which is something that we need to be doing, is looking for positive qualities in each other and recognizing that nobody comes to the table as perfect, and very imperfect people make wonderful, wonderful partners.
Yeah.
But it does bring us to, a number of questions that came in, and I guess something that we work with a lot here at Shalom Task Force is this idea of red flags, right? So one of the questions that came in was, despite mutual connection between a boy and a girl, their families, and I prefer we say young man, young woman, but that's a whole nother conversation. I think just the language of boy and girl, again, doesn't allow people to be adult and mature in this stage, but their families don't approve. Should I intervene? I don't know anything about the situation. These are anonymous questions, but I think often about what are the red flags? Why is it that the family doesn't approve? What can be said if people don't approve, if they see red flags? What should people be aware of? So it's like multiple questions, which is like an uh-oh when you're like a therapist, but we're not supposed to do that. But, what is it? What are we, there are times when they've met, right? People have met, we've gone through this, they've already met, and people aren't approving, or there are red flags. What do those red flags look like? What do you think, what would you recommend people do when they see red flags? And do you say something? So,
Should I start?
Yeah, start, please.
So I think red flags, I think that they should give us pause, right?
Yeah.
I think that sometimes they can indicate a larger pattern. I don't think red flags are so clear cut. Obviously, there are certain things that are really very obvious, like very angry or disrespectful, or, constantly bashing your family, or violating physical boundaries or emotional boundaries, consent issues. Like those are very obvious things. But then there's things that like are not so obvious, and then people kind of feel like iffy about, but then you'll have your friend who's like, no, but I saw a post on Instagram that said it's a red flag, ditch him, ditch her, and it's like, again, we have to see, is there a larger pattern here? Does this behavior make me feel unsafe or uncared for? Or do I feel bad about myself? And I think what's important is red flags, I feel like, are more obvious. I think we also need to look at green flags, right? We're always talking about like, look what's wrong, look for all the scary things, but let's look for some of the good things, which Rabbi Goldberg did mention a lot of them. I always say personality, capacity, emotionality. Are they patient? Are they curious about you? Do they ask you questions? Are they interested in you? Are they flexible? I think that's something Rabbi Goldberg said. Are they agreeable? Do they have depth to their personality? Do they have a range of self-expression? Do they have basic communication skills? Are they happy? Are you happy and safe with them? Do you know their friends? Like, I know people that have come in my office and they're dating for months and they've never met her friends or his friends. And I'm like, this is very important information, who your person surrounds themselves with. You need to know who their friends are, and they need to know who your friends are. So their friends are important. I think that people put a lot of emphasis on family, on like their parents or their siblings. And I would say, while that is important because it gives you information about how they grew up, I really think that a lot of people are quick to chuck someone away because I heard their brother, or I heard their sister, or I heard their mother. And I always go back to, like, if we were like back in the day going to the imahot and the avot, like, they did not have wonderful shidduch resumes. Their families were not getting the mikvah award and the community leadership. There was none of that. So if we're basing how we're choosing a partner on like their brother's lifestyle choices or their parents, or we're really knocking out potentially amazing partners. So I think, again, it's not something to ignore if there's a lot of dysfunction in a family, but you do want to be curious, because some people grow up in a home and they say, I will never do that. I've been in therapy. I want to know people that live in dysfunctional families that build the healthiest families better than the ones who don't admit that they were in dysfunction. So I think just looking for green flags. Are they aware of themselves? Are they honest about their issues? Do they want to work on their issues? Do they take responsibility for themselves? Are they always blaming other people for other things? That's a big one too. Someone who's always fetching about being a victim in their life. That's like a very hard personality trait to live with. So those are the things that you kind of want to look for. How do I feel when I'm around them? Am I happy to be with them? Do we laugh together? Do we smile, right? Like, am I excited to be around this person? And it doesn't mean fireworks all the time. I think it's more of a calm, relaxed, like, I just feel like I'm with my friend kind of feeling. But that's important. And again, that goes back to that, like, trusting your gut. Like, how do I feel with them? Do I feel?
Yeah, a lot of what you said, it really resonates with me and the work that we do with like students and young people at our agency around talking about red flags. And we always say red flags does not mean break up or break engagement or get divorced. It's just time to be curious and to slow things down. And again, then get the support you need to process what's going on. So, maybe the parents, it may be someone else, maybe a mental health professional, maybe a Rav, but to not have something that makes you feel, and some people do have that feeling, some people do not, for whatever their background, do not have that gut feeling. They don't, they never have been trusted to they're not trusted to trust themselves, they haven't taught to trust themselves, and how would they get it then? But to have the people in their lives to help them, and then pause, because, and I hope this is okay for me to say, but better to date 2 more weeks, right? And we got tons of questions. How many dates? How many? 10 dates too much? Is it better to date 2 more weeks and feel either more comfortable with the decision you're making, or not get into the wrong marriage, right? Like, those are the 2 outcomes, right? Become whatever that 2 weeks, whatever that name, like, it's better to take a little bit more time and feel more comfortable and explore how you're feeling and make sure it sits well. It doesn't mean you can't feel nervous. People feel nervous with next stages, but is it fear? Does it feel unsafe? Like, those are things, is there just like kind of like something doesn't add up. This isn't making sense to me, but I'm feeling so much pressure, and we have to name that. Like, we have to name, there's so much pressure, better to take the time and pause and be curious, and either make a decision from a place of more safety and comfort, or make a decision that isn't the right one. And that's a better decision to make when you're dating. That's how we think about it. We don't ever say, break. We just say, okay, slow down, get support. And I think that's an important place. And we often use that language of curious. I think it really, just makes it less scary. It's okay to be curious. We need to be curious. We need to be curious through our lives, right? That's how we have growth. And, that's really an important point. I don't know if there's anything the other panelists want to add, or we can move on.
I would just like to add one thing, just literally just happened last week. I actually had a couple that was dating. They were going out 9-10 times. And literally, instead of the feeling just progressively just getting better and more exciting, it kind of like plateaued. And I actually encouraged them, and it was very instrumental in breaking up the shidduch. And I was very relieved, and I was able to sleep much better, because it's not about, making another shidduch. It's about being comfortable and having them in a good place, an exciting place. And this is like the time. Like if you are not excited and over the moon and just really looking forward to this and all that, what are we pushing?
I don't know that, but
doing?
that's Rachel, would you agree with that statement?
I think that so that is something that I think it's pushed a lot about, like you should be so excited. And then I have people that are like, but I'm not. And does that mean I'm not supposed to? And I say, you don't have to necessarily feel those fireworks and like, oh my God, I can't wait. And whatever. Maybe you're really anxious and nervous because this is a really big decision and you might be terrified. And especially if you're someone that maybe came from a background where a healthy marriage was not modeled to you and that's all you want for yourself, then you might feel really, really nervous and you might feel like, oh my God, I don't want to mess this up. So I think even to have nerves and not be excited is totally fine. And I've had clients in my office that were dating that were like, they were there because they're like, why am I not excited? Like, is something wrong? You know? And it turned out in some of these cases, there was a reason not to be excited, but in some of them, it was just nerves, like healthy anxiety that happens when you're doing something big and important, you know? And sometimes anxiety is just that. I'm about to do something really big and important and I feel scared, and that's okay. You can feel scared, but also feel like you really like this person and you do want to go ahead. And so we kind of have to like make room for both of those feelings. You might feel super duper excited, but you might feel terrified. And neither one, by the way, we know people that were like in la la land, honeymoon, he's the best, she's the best. And then it was a disaster marriage. And a lot of the time that like honeymoon phase, right? Where like all of our vision is kind of blinded by this love, right? Like on a physiological level, that's how it works.
Orphans, yep.
Then we miss those red flags. We think he's perfect or she's perfect. And we miss a lot of the red flags that we should have seen because we're ignoring them or we're poo-pooing them. Like, oh, it's not, he's just like that. He just makes those kind of jokes. Or, oh, she just gets in these moods, but she's fine. And then when, you know, all of that goes away and real life sets in, then it's like, wait a minute, that's not so charming or cute. That's scary or annoying or not healthy or... So I don't know that, you know, there's any one reaction that like you should have. But again, I think the safety and the feeling good about yourself and
it still has to be right, like general, like excitement, you know, just like an overall excitement.
Well, for some people that might feel, I mean, I think for some people that might feel calm. I mean, I think there are people that there's in between. They're like, just feel like it's
a red flag that hasn't come up, which at least I think this is what you're getting at. And I totally agree because I recently had something like this too, was a red flag that we haven't described yet, which is when I have to see him again or her again, I dread it. When the date or the phone call are over, I'm so relieved, right? I recently had a young lady, not from our community, who called me, who was engaged, but was describing to me, I don't know if something's wrong, but I really can't stand spending time with him. I'm so relieved that there are gedarim that limit how often I have to see him and speak to him. The whole time we're together, I can't wait for it to be over, and I dread when the next time is. Do you think that I should go through with the wedding? Mm-hmm. So there is a red flag. You know, I like to think of it as, and I challenge people, what I call the caller ID test. I don't know, that'll be outdated soon, but when you see the other person's name come up on your caller ID, when you see a text come in from them, I mean, you could go from the extreme that your heart flutters and you have a physiological reaction, you're excited, to just, oh, I'm excited. I'm curious to hear from them or to connect with them or to share with them or have their share with me. So I think that's an enormous red flag of if you see it and you just press ignore and you get out of it and you say, call you later, and you say, oh, again, I have to talk again, then that's a red flag. When you say, oh, yes, I'm excited and I want to share and I want to be shared to and with, I think that's a big sign. So the caller ID test, I think, is one of those
flags. Interesting.
Rich, you have a great list of flags, and they're sort of the more extreme ones. But I think that basic one, it says, that's going to tell you what your gut is telling you. Someone taught me a long time ago, when you feel that you're conflicted, whether you want to do this or that, take a coin and flip it in the air and name heads this and tails that. And while it's in the air, your gut's going to tell you which one you really want. You think you want them equally 50-50. While it's in the air, when your gut tells you how you want it to land, you're going to know which one you want. So the caller ID is kind of telling you what's in your gut. How do you feel? That doesn't mean that you're always super excited every time you're going to spend time with someone all the time, but it does mean that generally speaking, what is the trend? And in that case, and at least I think that's what you were describing, this young lady broke her engagement, and that was absolutely the correct thing to do, much better than later breaking her marriage, which would have been inevitable given the lack of feeling, affection, curiosity, connection that she had with him altogether. I think that's an important one. The other thing I'll just make quickly is when we talk about it, the question was, seeing red flags, when should we intervene? Are they our son or daughter's red flag, or are we projecting our red flag? Is it our hang up, our personality, our hashkafa, our preference, what we would want? Is it a red flag for us or a red flag for them? And that's a theme tonight in several of these questions. Is our responsibility is to guide and support and love and encourage and empower, but not to project. And so I think it's important to identify, is the red flag a red flag for us, or for them? And we don't always have the expertise to know what's a red flag. So for example, we may see the person that our child is really falling in love with and say, they're way too weak, they're way too passive, or they're way too strong, they're way too powerful. Well, maybe that personality wouldn't mesh with us. Maybe there would be direct conflict for us, but maybe our child, that's exactly what they need. Maybe they want a type A personality who they will take care of them, or maybe they want someone that they can take care of. So I think it's important to ask ourselves, is that flag a flag for them or a flag for us? And remember that we're not the one who's entering this marriage. We're trying to set our child up for their success.
So that's going to bring us to our next question. I want to be mindful of time, and some of these are really important. And when I think red flags, I guess from the perspective of, being in the Shalom Task Force world, I often think about a lot of the flags that Rachel were talking about, jealousy, possessiveness, isolating the other person, things that to us, we see as kind of predictors for later abusive behavior. And perhaps that's a little bit different. Maybe there's another language you should be using when we're thinking about the red flag, other kind of, they're called red flags, just positive and negative markers of what's going on for the person. I love this idea of caller ID. Like, does a caller ID, even if you're the office and the person calls and you can't get to it, do you smile knowing that the person's reaching out to you? Or is like, oh no, I dread having to call them? I think that's an interesting thing. That's a little bit of different kind of red flag to me than, the isolation, jealousy, boundary crossing things that we're talking about, but in the sense of like, is this a good fit? Like, does it feel like a good fit if I'm dreading a phone call? And that's something to be, again, curious about. Like, if I'm dreading a phone call, why is that? Is it because?
Well, that's why I think the red flag discussion is like a little bit, I think it creates a lot of like panic in someone, where it's more just these kind of questions. Do I feel excited around them? Do I feel happy around them? Do I feel happy talking to them?
Do I feel respected? Can I have my own independent,
information? Information. How do I feel around
And
them?
the image of the green flag is a great image, which means, yes, these are things to consider, be curious about, still learn about. But are you generally excited? Do you look forward to the next date, an opportunity to talk or to share what happened in your day? So let's point out and highlight the green flags too. Like, that's really healthy. That's excited. And that's much more important to marriage than some of the things in the resume or references. Absolutely. He's not going to give you a sheer klali at your Shabbos table, but you are going to want to be excited to spend time together and not dread is coming home from yeshiva or work. So in terms of the green flags, I think that's a great image too.
Right. So just as a Shadchan, and like at Adopt-a-Shadchan, what we emphasize is our red flag, and that's what I meant when I was saying over the moon. Is our indicator is if the couple is calling the Shadchan, if the couple is calling me more than they're talking to each other, and or they're involving me after date 6 or 7 or 8, like incessantly, it's no good. I'm not getting married with you. I'm not going to be walking down the aisle with you. I'm not living with you. Like, it's just not, and I feel sometimes, depending on the age, like if you're 22, like Shadchanim, like we shouldn't be trying to patch things up. It shouldn't be so hard in a typical average case.
But sometimes I think about this, and maybe I'm just playing devil's advocate with you, is that some of that is just people don't have skills. We don't teach people skills. Like, we see that all the time. We don't have communication skills. I would say all young people, I'd say many of us, we depend on text, WhatsApps, and, Instagram posts to communicate our
and that's why we need mandatory, and that's why we need mandatory coaching.
Like, however we do that, but if people might be in a good place, but they don't even know how to talk to each other about what they want to do next because they've never been.
Yeah, I always
don't get engaged yet. Figure this out before you get
relationship skills are like in chassan and kala classes, where I feel like in high school we should be reading Gottman books and we should be reading for real, but we should be reading nonviolent communication. Kids, they need these skills for friendships. They don't have them. We should be giving them these relationship skills, not 19, 20 years old, right before you get married, 21 years old. Suddenly we're having all these talks about intimacy and sexuality and relationships and finances. We should be doing this when they're entering high school and they're starting to think about mature relationships and connection with people. And, so we toss it on them and we expect them to suddenly like know how to communicate. And then, when they're calling the Shadchan and the Shadchan's like, leave me out of this already,
I think I could own this, and I imagine that people here can also. That are we modeling that in our own lives? We depend so much on a short text to someone. We don't even call people to invite them for Shabbos anymore. It's just a text in a WhatsApp chat. We just don't do that kind of work where we don't. And I don't think that our children really see us having conversations. So how would they know? And I don't know that that's an indicator. Is that a red flag, or is that something to be curious? Is it because of a skill, like there's just a lack of skill and they need coaching, modeling, whatever, or is it really a problem in the relationship? And I can't answer that from here, but it's something again to figure out and flesh out, because you don't want to dismiss a potential match because of that. But people do need to be empowered, because in the day-to-day of marriage, they will need those skills to have, to flourish. Okay, I'm going to get to the next one because our time, this is fantastic. Obviously, it's the beginning of a conversation, but I think this is something it's important for us to do. And Goldberg, you started this. One question was, my child's currently dating someone. I have negative opinions and biases. Is it okay to me to share them with my child? And I really liked your point. Is it my issue? Is there a real issue? Flushing that out. And I think that also goes back to why, the first question of, do we need them to be ready to date for my need to have a child dating and getting married, or for their need? But let's say legitimately, there's something there that just feels you're able to say, it's not about me. This is really about just something just doesn't sit right. What should we do? What do people,
So word of caution,
yeah.
And this is true from siblings, friends, parents. When you object too strongly and that person's not necessarily going to follow your advice, you will have a lifelong resentment held against you, because you so definitively and confidently, conclusively said that this is a terrible idea, will be a disaster, your heart will be broken, it's going to fall apart, and you will always be that person who said that. So be very, very careful and keep an eye to the future Biroa Es HaNolad, that if this were to proceed and progress nonetheless, how can you say it in such a way that you've not marginalized yourself from that person's life going forward, or at least from this relationship? And also know that if it does progress, they're likely going to share it with their spouse, how you always felt about them and what you warned. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't speak up when you feel you need to. You should, but it does, I think, very much inform how you do it. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I think many have chimed in. You could do it from curiosity and say, hey, I've noticed this a little bit. Have you seen that? How do you feel about that? And more you're curious, you're planting a seed, you want to hear whether they've even noticed it. If you make it as an accusation, then the other person's going to get very defensive of it, pretend it's not an issue, it's an adorable idiosyncrasy, it's even actually charming and a wonderful quality they have, you're wrong and you're off. So we could give many examples of it. Some things are much more alarming than others in terms of what we see. But assuming it's not something that is what we were calling a red flag, alarming, a deal breaker, something you think that's threatening the safety and security emotionally, physically of your child, but assuming it's just behavior or a trend, I just think we should be very thoughtful and strategic how we raise it more out of curiosity. How do you feel? Have you seen it? I've noticed. How do you feel about that? Than it is from saying, look, this is terrible. This is a disaster. I've seen this. This is wrong. You're going to be miserable. You're going to be unhappy. So I think it's really careful to be mindful of how we raise it and present it.
Yeah, spot on. Rachel, did you want to add anything to that?
And you, Shana, you can attest to this completely, that if we do those kinds of things, this guy, he's terrible for you, and then they ends up with them. And then let's say there's a real issue, the likelihood of them reaching out to you, if they're in a dangerous situation, right? We really jeopardize that because they don't feel safe to reach out to you. You shamed me. You told me this was going to happen. He was right. He said, you're not going to be there for me. So we never want our kids to be in a situation where they feel like, you know what, you warned me and now I'm embarrassed that I'm in this situation. I should have listened. I'm such an idiot. And then they're stuck. So we do want to come from that. Hey, I noticed. I'm curious about what's that like for you? I noticed this, here's what I'm thinking, but maybe it's just my nerves. Tell me, are you okay with this? And if you are, I'm trusting you, really keeping it open, because we never want our kids to be in a situation where they feel like they can't contact us and they can't say, I'm in trouble. I need help.
From the Shalom Task Force perspective, I'll tell you that we find that when you do that, when you take a very harsh perspective against someone, then they always align themselves with the person that they love at the moment, right? So, it matters where in the relationship. It's a first date and you see something that might be very different, but they're emotionally attached exactly what Rabbi Goldberg and Rachel are saying, like you come from a place of curiosity and trusting them and engaging them, because later, if they do need help and they've already feel cut off, then you're an important resource that's no longer available to them. And it makes it even harder for them to get the help they need later. So it's a really hard balance. And I would say, if you're in that situation, I think it's important for that person to get support, because it can be so painful to watch something unfold that feels so scary to you, and to really flesh it out. And, there's extremes in it, certainly, you have to figure out, but you don't want to have the person feel that they have to choose between you and their family, their nuclear family, their family of origin, their parents, and this person that they are in a relationship with. Because when they have to make that choice, then often they'll choose not, they'll choose the other, and then they're alone. And they're alone. And we see that a lot, where they come to us and they're coming to us for support because they have no one left in their family to get support. And we're here for that, but really, we want to help them re-engage their family. There's one last question, and then we're going to have to do this another time because we have many that came in, but I think this is, I'm interested to hear your response. I pressured my daughter too much to take a proactive approach to dating. Now she refuses to discuss dating with me. How can I handle the situation? I think this reflects other questions that came in about relationship of parent and child during this stage. How does one manage this? And let's just call it what it is. How does someone manage the peer pressure, the anxiety, the fear, the sadness that is so real during this chapter as well? So you want to go for that first? It's heavy.
Okay, I'll go ahead. I just feel like I've been jumping on the questions, but I'll go ahead. I think that in terms of the peer pressure and the anxiety and the fear and the sadness, we have to just validate it. There's a real pressure in this world. And even if your daughter or son is only X, 20, 21, and you're like, what on earth? Why do you feel this pressure? Saying that to them is not helpful. It doesn't make them feel less pressure. So instead you say, I get it that we live in this world where there's a lot of pressure on you, and all of your friends around you are kind of obsessed or even going on, jumping on that train, and you're still stuck here at the stop. You don't have the ticket to take the ride too. So just validating them, not blaming them. That's a big one. A lot of time parents will think they're offering advice. Well, you just need to, or you should call more, or you should go here. And then these men and women start feeling blamed. I'm doing everything I can, Mom. It sounds like you think I'm not trying. And so I think that's really important. Never to always ask, do you want me just to listen, or do you want my advice? And when you give advice, to be very mindful of what that advice is. So it's not, you're not trying hard enough, or you're not open, or you're too picky, or it's just, it has to be more just practical things that that they won't feel attacked. And again, it's sensitive because they're feeling very lonely, and they're feeling very misunderstood, and they're feeling, very left out. And so I just think listening without trying to fix, I think that's our role as parents in general also, is just to listen without offering advice. A lot of the time our kids just want to dump. It's called externalizing. I want to get all my stress out so that I can face the world. And so that's kind of the joy of parenting, that we are that emotional dumping ground, but that's what we're here for. And we say, I'm not scared of those feelings. I know you're terrified you're never going to get married, but I'm not, even though maybe I am, but I'm going to daven that I retain that fear and I don't spill it everywhere. But I know you're a great girl, you're a great guy. I know you're going to find someone, and I know that you feel terrified, but I'm going to be here with you, and I'm going to help you, and I'm going to support you. We really just have to be a sturdy presence. And if you're getting dysregulated and stressed from your child's dating life, I would say, please reach out to a therapist. I would say maybe support from friends, but I feel like sometimes friends fuel the fire with their stress, and it could be a disaster talking to other parents about it. So I don't think that's a good idea. But maybe just thinking about speaking to a professional to manage your anxiety around your daughter or son's dating life. But really just thinking, I'm here to listen. I'm not here to fix. I'm not here to offer advice. And again, you can always say, do you want to hear what I'm thinking? And they might say, no, I just want to talk. And again, but I'm your mother, but I'm your father. Okay, that's what I'm here for. I want to listen. I'm listening. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. And that's really important for our kids to hear.
Is the son or daughter keeping it to themselves? Is this the way they always are? Or is this a departure from their usual behavior? Meaning, do they sit and talk to you all about school and friends and life and this and that? And all of a sudden in dating, now they're not talking to you. Now they're not disclosing. Now they're not confiding. I would think then that's pause to consider why. If this is a personality, there are personalities. There are very private people. There are people who are mature and who want to express their being mature and taking responsibility, and are sort of counterculture where the parents are overly involved. So maybe one indicator is this fit into their normal behavior in other areas of life? Or is this a departure from it and therefore a reason to be concerned that they're not sharing? Why aren't they sharing?
Lisa, do you want?
Yeah, people ask me like,
yeah,
I want to become a shadchan. Like, what would you say is like the number one piece about being a good shadchan? And I say the number one part about being a good shadchan is to be a good listener. Just listen to what they're saying, listen to what they need. It's not about you. And parents have to play that role also. It's not about what you want and what you think is, what you think is best for them. Listen to your child, listen to what they're saying, and then they'll come to you. Children they want their parents' approval. That's all they want. So make sure that you're giving over like the right priorities and the right focus, and you'll be okay.
Can I just mention one other thing? Something that comes up in a lot of podcasts with singles, about singles, with shadchanim, and it's important for parents of singles to reiterate, is that your child, your son or daughter, this man or woman, has an entire life outside their identity of being single.
You. Yeah.
Maybe the reason they're not talking to you is because it's all you talk about with them, and it's all you want to know, and it's all that you ask about, and it's all that you demand information on. And maybe their revolt against it is to say, I'm cutting you out because I want you to connect with the other part of me that is an Eved Hashem, that is a Gomel Chesed, that is a professional, that is involved in academics, there's so many facets to who I am and how I live and my identity. My not yet being a married child of yours is not the sum total of who I am. And sometimes a child will push back at a parent because they don't engage the rest of who they are. And maybe the way to get them to open up about the dating is to also be curious and interested and proud of the total picture of who they are.
I feel like that's such an important point to parents, and it's an important point to community, right? That we don't only categorize people as married and unmarried, that people contribute in many different ways that come with so many different parts and assets and facets and like strengths to our communities, and to be able to really embrace them as a whole people. It's not the only defining characteristic of any of us. We're coming to a close for tonight. I was asked each panelist, I don't know which order we should go into, just if you have one tidbit, something you would love to impart to our audience today. Lisa, do you want to start? One little tidbit.
Sure, one little tidbit. As I would say is that, the person that your child might end up with might not be what you dreamt of, what you thought about, but like, please, let's just focus on what's right and what's good for your child. And sometimes it might mean involving a coach, involving an outside source. And it doesn't, it's not a chisaron for you as a parent. It's only a plus. You take the most successful Rabbeim, like they have to hire Gemara tutors for their own kids. That's just the way it is. And just embrace that. And just to give a shout out to Adopt-a-Shadchan, if you really, really want to hear more in detail about what we do, tune in to Behind the Bima. I did a podcast 2 weeks ago with Rabbi Goldberg, and I think it was freaking awesome.
Yeah, it was. Rachel, can you share a final tidbit or final takeaway?
I'm gonna check it out. I think parents need to just remember that at the end of the day, your relationship with your child is what matters the most. And your kids are going to make choices that you don't necessarily agree with and that scare the you-know-what out of you. But you have to just remember, I never want my child to think that I will not be there for them in the good choices and the bad choices, even more so in the bad choices. I love you unconditionally. And even if I don't understand or I'm nervous for you, I am always here for you. And I think that's so important, because even if they're not in an abusive relationship, but they're struggling with something else in their marriage, with their kid, in their life, they have to know that you're there for them. We always want our parents. And this is something you said, Lisa, and I was actually just saying this in a session the other day. I hear clients say all the time, they know their parents are dysfunctional or unhealthy. And they always say, why can't they just be normal? We always want connection with our parents. We're always wishing for them to hold us close, even as adults, not just little kids, even 50-year-old, 60-year-old men and women. Why can't my mom be this? Why can't my dad be that? Be that for your child. Be there for them, connect with them, and tell them you love them all the time, and not no matter what. I love you even more. With all of these choices and things you're doing, I love getting to know and understand you more. And that's it. Not like, well, I wouldn't personally do it, but I love you anyway. You are your own person, and I am totally supportive of you. And I just want you to be happy. And that is my goal, you know, and I think that's a message that I think will help give our kids the confidence to make the right decisions and make healthy decisions. But also when they're in a position where they realize they haven't, that they have the tools to get out of it because they have you at least to help them, you know? I think that's really what I would emphasize a lot.
Thank you. Rabbi Goldberg?
Maybe really piggybacking and complimenting the other things that were said for Lisa. So that was the best endorsement I've ever heard of our podcast. Thank you.
And we will link it. We're going to link it. Don't worry.
I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. And Shana, you're the only one we haven't had on. We had Rachel on Out of the Shadows. So
okay, anytime.
We'll have to follow up on that too. But I think it's important for parents, and my wife often encourages not to really wrap up their identity with their child. To remember that once you've raised your child, if they're old enough to be dating and getting married, support and mentor and coach and teach and love and all the things that we're talking about, but never confuse them with you. You're a person and they're an independent person who has free will. They have bechira chavshis, and you're trying to help them and empower them to use their bechira well, but ultimately their bechira is not you. It's not your identity. It's not your happiness. It's not your life. And it may not be your choices. So as much as dating is a time that we're encouraging younger people or whatever age they're dating to know themselves, the parents of those who are dating also equally can use that time to know ourselves and to explore and look in the mirror. Who are we? What are our strengths? What are our hangups? How is that going to play into this dating, into managing the dating, into the advice we're giving in dating, into how we react to what's going on with the dating? And just to remember that our children have identities and our neshamas and our people independent in their marital status. That is not the sum total of who they are, and that the choices they make ultimately are a reflection of them, not necessarily of us. We'll do the best we can to get them to the best choices we can be the most proud of, but whatever their choice, they're our child and we love them, and they are not us. They're not, we have an independent identity.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to thank our panelists for their time, passion, and commitment to the community and the health of the community, and for joining us tonight. Thank you, Adopt-a-Shadchan, for collaborating with us on this project. All the participants tonight, every registrant will be receiving a recording to this event, along with a link. We're going to add a link to Behind the Bima to make sure everybody gets to see that. I saw it. It was an awesome podcast. And we're also going to have an evaluation survey. We take your input seriously. It's a chance to share your feedback and help us form future programming. So please, when you get that tonight or tomorrow morning, please just take a few moments and fill it out. And if you know anyone who needs the help of Shalom Task Force, I would say we're here for you. You could call, text, or WhatsApp us at 888-883-2323. Thank you very, very much, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.